Clara moved through the polished halls of Harrison Tower as if she owned them, which, in a way, she did. Her father's name was etched into the glass doors, carved into the marble lobby, and whispered in every boardroom. At 22, her life was a curated collection of effortless luxuries, a world where problems were solved by a phone call and emotions were managed like assets. She carried her boredom like an expensive handbag, a shield against a world she found profoundly uninteresting. Before we continue, tell us where in the world you're watching from. Drop it in the comments below. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful content like this. Her father, Richard Harrison, was a man built of spreadsheets and ambition. He saw his daughter's apathy as a flaw in his otherwise perfect portfolio, a variable he couldn't control. He'd tried everything, from Ivy League business courses she'd dropped out of to internships at fashion magazines she'd mocked. Nothing stuck. She drifted through life with a casual disdain for everything he valued: discipline, ambition, legacy. He saw her as a beautiful, frustrating project that was falling behind schedule. One Tuesday afternoon, the weight of her own emptiness felt particularly heavy. After a tense lunch with her father where he'd once again outlined her failures, she found herself wandering aimlessly down a quiet service corridor on the 17th floor. The air here was different, free of the scent of expensive perfume and corporate pressure. It smelled of cleaning supplies and quiet labor. Leaning against the cool painted wall, she slid to the floor, the frustration finally bubbling over. A silent, hot tear traced a path down her cheek. It wasn't sadness, not really. It was a hollow ache, a feeling of being utterly and completely disconnected from her own life. She didn't notice the soft, rhythmic sweeping that had stopped nearby. An old man in a gray janitor's uniform stood a few feet away, his broom held loosely in one hand. His name was Samuel, a fact unknown to nearly everyone who hurried past him each day. He had kind eyes, etched with the lines of a life lived with quiet observation. He didn't speak. He simply reached into his cart, pulled out a small folded clean cloth, and placed it on the floor beside her. Then he stepped back, giving her space, and resumed his sweeping, his movements slow and deliberate. Clara stared at the cloth, then up at the man. His lack of reaction was more unnerving than pity would have been. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He just saw her, and then he let her be. Annoyed by his intrusion, yet strangely affected by his silent gesture, she pushed herself up, leaving the cloth untouched on the sterile floor. She walked away without a word, her expensive heels clicking an angry rhythm on the linoleum. But as she returned to the world of glass and steel, the image of the old man and his simple, unquestioning act of dignity lingered in her mind, a tiny crack in the polished facade of her indifference. It was a beginning, a quiet, unassuming tremor before the earthquake that would eventually reshape her entire world. The encounter in the hallway became a strange fixture in Clara's mind. She started noticing Samuel, really seeing him for the first time. He was a ghost in the corporate machine, always present, but entirely overlooked. She watched him from a distance as he wiped down conference tables after heated negotiations, his movements unhurried and graceful. He cleaned the glass walls that separated executives from the world, his reflection a fleeting, humble presence amid the reflections of power and wealth. One afternoon, driven by a mixture of unresolved irritation and a flicker of genuine curiosity, she approached him while he was polishing the brass fixtures by the elevators. "Do you ever get tired of cleaning up other people's messes?" she asked, her tone sharper than she intended. Samuel paused his work, turning his calm gaze toward her. He didn't seem offended. He seemed to look right through her carefully constructed armor. "A mess is just a sign that life is happening," he said, his voice soft but clear. "It's better than a room that's always empty." His words were simple, yet they landed with a strange weight. She had expected a complaint, a sigh, something that would confirm her worldview of his miserable lot in life. Instead, he offered a perspective she couldn't process. She scoffed, trying to regain her footing. "That's a nice way of looking at it, I guess." He gave a small nod and returned to his polishing. "It's the only way that makes sense," he added quietly, more to himself than to her. Their brief conversations became a bizarre, unspoken routine. She would find him on his rounds and ask him pointed, almost cynical questions about his life, and he would respond with simple, parable-like truths that disarmed her every time. Her father noticed this new, peculiar habit. "I see you've taken to fraternizing with the staff, Clara," Richard said one evening, his disapproval clear. "Don't you have better things to do? I've arranged a meeting for you with the marketing director next week." To him, Samuel was just a uniform, an invisible part of the building's maintenance. That his daughter, the heir to his empire, was spending her time speaking with him was not just a waste, it was an embarrassment. "He's more interesting than your marketing director," Clara retorted, the rebellious spark taking her by surprise. The more her father pushed her toward his world of status and strategy, the more she found herself drawn to Samuel's quiet wisdom. She began to realize that while her father spoke of value in terms of profit margins and market share, Samuel spoke of value in terms of purpose and presence. For the first time, she was beginning to question which definition was the right one. The real shift began when Samuel made a simple suggestion. He had noticed the deep, restless boredom in her eyes, the way she wandered a building like a gilded prisoner. "You have good hands," he told her one afternoon, nodding toward her phone as she scrolled endlessly. "They were made for more than just holding a screen. They were made to build, to help." Clara was about to make a sarcastic remark, but something in his earnest expression stopped her. "What am I supposed to build?" she asked, the question genuine. "Tomorrow, instead of coming here, go to the community kitchen on Elm Street," he said. "They open at 9. Just tell them Samuel sent you. Don't think about it. Just go and use your hands." The idea was absurd. Her in a soup kitchen? But the challenge in his voice and the utter lack of anything better to do propelled her to go. She arrived the next morning dressed in designer jeans and a silk blouse, feeling completely out of place. The kitchen was a chaotic symphony of clanging pots, loud voices, and the smell of simmering soup. It was messy, real, and overwhelming. A woman named Maria, with a no-nonsense attitude and flour on her apron, handed her a knife and pointed to a mountain of potatoes. The first hour was miserable. Her hands, accustomed to the smooth glass of her phone, grew sore and blistered. She felt clumsy, useless. The people around her, volunteers from all walks of life, worked with an easy camaraderie she couldn't penetrate. They didn't care about her last name or the car she drove. They just cared if she could peel a potato without wasting it. As she worked, she started listening. She heard the story of an elderly man who came every day, not just for the food, but for the company. She spoke to a young single mother who volunteered between her two jobs because, as she put it, everyone needs to feel useful. These weren't sob stories. They were accounts of resilience, of dignity in the face of hardship. For the first time, Clara heard stories that weren't about acquiring more, but about getting by with enough. A young boy, no older than 7, came up to her and shyly thanked her for the meal. His smile was missing a front tooth, and it was the most genuine, unguarded thing she had ever seen. In that moment, something inside her cracked open. She wasn't an heiress. She wasn't a disappointment. She was just a person peeling potatoes who had helped feed a little boy. When she left that afternoon, her clothes were stained and her body ached, but her mind was quiet. The hollow feeling was gone, replaced by a profound, grounding sense of purpose. She had done something that mattered, something no amount of her father's money could ever buy. She had connected. The annual Harrison Foundation Gala was the crown jewel of her father's philanthropic empire. A night where immense wealth was put on display in the name of charity. Richard Harrison saw this year's event as the perfect stage for Clara's public rebranding. He had seen a change in her, a newfound seriousness, and while he didn't understand its origins at the soup kitchen, he intended to leverage it. He had a speech professionally written for her, filled with corporate buzzwords about social responsibility and strategic giving. "This is your chance, Clara," he told her, handing her the leather-bound folder. "Show them you're ready to take your place in this family." She read the speech, and the words felt like ashes in her mouth. They were hollow, performative. They spoke of charity as a transaction, a way to polish a corporate image. It was everything she had come to despise. The night of the gala, she felt the old anxiety creeping back, the feeling of being a fraud in a beautiful dress. Before she left, she sought out Samuel, who was sweeping the now empty lobby. He looked at her, at the shimmering gown and the troubled expression in her eyes. "They want me to be someone I'm not anymore," she whispered, her voice tight with fear. Samuel leaned on his broom and looked at her kindly. "A tree doesn't grow by pretending to be a different kind of tree," he said. "It just grows toward the light, whichever way it can find it. Your heart knows where the light is. Just speak from there." His words settled her. When she was called to the podium, the ballroom fell silent. Hundreds of powerful, wealthy faces turned to her, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and expectation. Her father sat at the front table, beaming with pride, ready to witness the unveiling of his perfected daughter. Clara looked down at the speech in her hands, its carefully crafted lies feeling heavier than ever. Then she looked up, met the gaze of a crowd, and pushed the folder aside. "Good evening," she began, her voice clear and steady. "My father asked me to speak tonight about our foundation's commitment to giving. But I can't read that speech." A murmur went through the room. Richard's smile froze on his face. "Because for most of my life, I didn't understand what giving was," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "I thought it was about writing checks and posing for pictures. I thought it was a way for people like us to feel good about having so much. But I was wrong." She took a deep breath. "True giving isn't about what you can spare. It's about what you can share, your time, your attention, your humanity. I've learned more about life in the last few months from peeling potatoes in a soup kitchen than I ever did in a boardroom. I learned it from people who have nothing, but who give everything. And I learned it from a wise man who taught me that the cleanest floors in this city can't hide a messy soul. She paused, her gaze sweeping the stunned room until it landed on her father. His face was pale, his expression a mask of disbelief and utter humiliation. He was frozen, a statue of broken expectations. "The most valuable lesson I've ever learned," she finished, "I learned from our company's janitor. He taught me that your worth isn't measured by your title, but by your impact on the people you never thought to look at." With that, she stepped away from the podium, leaving a chasm of stunned silence in her wake. The aftermath of the gala was a storm of silent fury. Richard Harrison didn't yell. He didn't have to. The chill in his voice when he finally spoke to Clara the next day was colder than any shouted word. "You publicly humiliated me," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "You took a lifetime of work, of building a reputation, and you turned it into a punchline about a janitor." Clara met his gaze, no longer intimidated. "I told the truth," she replied simply, "and that's what you can't stand." For weeks, a deep freeze settled over their relationship. Her father canceled her credit cards and took away her car, treating her rebellion like a childish tantrum that needed to be punished. But for Clara, the loss of her privileges felt like shedding a heavy skin. She continued to volunteer at the kitchen, trading her designer clothes for aprons and her empty days for meaningful work. She found a small apartment she could afford with the money she earned doing odd jobs. For the first time, she was building a life that was truly her own. Richard, meanwhile, found himself adrift. His daughter's words had shaken something loose inside him. He started watching Samuel from his office window, observing the old man's quiet dignity, the way he treated every task with the same level of care. One evening, long after everyone else had gone home, he went down to the lobby. Samuel was emptying the trash cans, his movements methodical. "She said you taught her everything," Richard said, the words feeling foreign in his mouth. Samuel paused, turning to face the powerful man. "I didn't teach her anything, sir," he replied calmly. "I just helped her see what was already there." The simplicity of the answer left Richard with nothing to say. He saw for the first time the profound gap between his world of complex deals and Samuel's world of simple truths. He began to see that his daughter hadn't run away from him. She had run towards something real. A month later, Clara was organizing a fundraising drive for the community kitchen, which was in danger of closing. She was struggling, unable to raise the funds needed from small donations alone. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was from the Harrison Foundation. Inside was a check for the full amount needed, with a handwritten note on her father's personal stationery. It read, "You were right. The most important investments aren't the ones that make the news. They're the ones that build something that lasts. I'm proud of you." There was no grand reunion, no tearful apology, but in that quiet gesture, a bridge was built. Richard didn't change overnight, but he had started to listen. He established a new anonymous grant program within his foundation, one focused on grassroots community projects, and he put Clara in charge of it. The final scene wasn't in a boardroom or a ballroom. It was at the newly renovated community kitchen. Clara stood beside Samuel, both of them wearing aprons, serving a line of grateful people. Her father stood quietly by the door, watching, not as a billionaire benefactor, but simply as a father, finally seeing his daughter for who she truly was. She was no longer just his heiress. She was her own legacy.